Hi guys, greetings and welcome. Okay, so this video will be about the first beginner steps you can take to just get into the game and get the initial training going. Currently in Mordhau there's no option to bind the activation of the console with normal keybinds. But being able to open the console is quite important, so I will show you how you can do that. Basically you have to edit an INI file, and there are two options. So you just go to your Steam folder, then it's Steam Apps, Common, Mordhau config, and there you would find the default input INI. In that INI file you can find the line minus console keys equals tilde, and this is somewhat the reason why the tilde key is not working. So you either change it there, put a plus in front of it and change it to a key you like, or as long as you don't care for the tilde key, you can go to the folder Steam Apps, Common, Mordhau engine config, and there you find the base input INI. And there you will find the line plus console keys equals tilde, and there just change tilde to any key you like. So these are the more interesting commands for practicing, analyzing, warming up, and so on. Add bots, it's quite obvious, and X is just the amount of bots you want to have. The AI is not that bad, so get an initial feel for the game, and the combat against bots is pretty viable, as well as just warming up or something. Remove bots, well, it's just remove the amount of bots you want to remove. Slow motion with slow-mo is very handy for analyzing stuff, and X1 is just the default value, everything below is slower, everything above is faster. Restart level is quite obvious, as well as change level, and the X is just a map name. If you're playing with other players, then you can list the Steam IDs and the player number of player list. And if you feel you need to vote kick someone, then you can just type in vote kick, and X is just the player number. If you're very new to Mordhau, then I think there are two things you really should train. The one would be chambering, and the one would be to just parry and riposte. These are two very essential skills you need. I don't think you need to chamber a lot or something, but it is important that if you want to chamber, that you can do it properly. I personally think that the 240 system is the best for that, because it is just more intuitive to just move your mouse in the direction the attack is coming from, instead of realizing if it's an upper strike, which direction, and pressing the right keybind. At least for me personally, it is way easier with 240. Also, especially for chambering, I can extremely or highly suggest to have angle attack after press, because you can just press your left mouse button, as I'm just pressing it now, and nothing happens, and then you can just move to the direction where the attack is coming from. And that makes, at least for me, chambering very easy and comfortable. The most struggle I had initially was to identify if it's a stab or a strike in time, so it takes a while to get the timing right and to read the animations. Just practice it against bots. Of course, training against bots will never replace fighting against humans, but you have to start somewhere. So initially, if you want to start practicing chambering, then go for a loadout like that, for 3 armor on every slot, head, torso and legs, and maybe just 2 training swords, a medic bag. You have enough points anyways. The important thing is to have training swords and maybe a medic bag. This also works for multiplayer, so if you're on a dual server, you can just drop a training sword and ask someone to train with you, and most of the time they are pretty willing to do so and just give you tips and teach you and so on. Alright, so a more versatile setup for just training against bots would be to pick a longsword, a normal weapon and a training sword. And maybe reduce the leg armor a bit and pick the second wind perk. I will go into more detail about loadouts a bit later, but yeah, just for training against bots, that is a pretty decent setup. As said, training against humans is always better, but if you do not have a training partner yet, then training against bots is quite a good start. So you just go to fight, local match, and I suggest contraband because it is a very small and square map, so the bots don't have a long way to get to you or you to them and so on. So yeah, contraband is just the best pick, I think. And then you basically just add bots 1 and get it started. Each attack has 3 phases: the wind up, release and the recovery time. So when you swing, you just pull back your weapon, the wind up, then the actual damaging swing, the release, and after that the return to neutral position, the recovery. During the wind up phase you can feint, morph or parry, and you cannot do that on the release or the recovery. The bots do occasionally feint or morph, but usually you will encounter that more against humans, and initially it is pretty hard to read and really notice when the actual damaging release starts. So this is a bit tricky. For me personally, activating tracers helped quite a bit, so you can draw tracers, reduce the time because of course they are a bit distracting, and then you can actually see a starting tracer when the actual damaging swing starts. So if you feint, there is no damaging tracer or something, and the really damaging tracer will just start when the actual release starts as well. So at least initially this helps to determine when it is really the damaging swing. The tracers also help to get a good feel for the weapon distances and to judge if you can evade the attack or not. Basically you have 3 clues to detect if it's a feint or a morph or a really actual damaging attack. Basically it is an audio clue, the grunt, then there's some kind of natural tracer. If you swing your weapon, then you will see some kind of blurry air, and this is a second clue, a visual one, and then you will see that the hands are going into a pulling animation. I fought a bot in slow motion, so you can see when the hands start to really pull the weapon or thrust. And yeah, maybe you can hear the grunt. I have the in-game audio pretty low for the recording, but yeah, in-game you will notice that. So it is a combination. There's not a one and only thing to look out for or listen. It's a combination. So it is the hands to look if they are already really pulling or thrusting, then the blurry line in the air, and the grunt. So the 3 clues together lets you determine whether it's a feint or morph or an actual damaging attack. And with time you will pick up that clues unconsciously and react to that. Alright, so as a very basic introduction to combat, when you're on the defensive side you want to go back to just get a bigger distance to see what the enemy is doing. So you see more, you have more time to react. So when you're on the defensive side, just go back while your opponent attacks so you can read his animations better and see them. On the other side, if you are attacking, you want to go forward and even sprint. So if you sprint and attack, you normally do some kind of a lunge attack, so you make sure you reach your opponent. Apart from all that, there's something that is called swing manipulation. Of course, when you swing a weapon, you don't just want to be standing there, you want to mess up the parry timing of your opponent. So there's a way to accelerate your swings or to drag them, to just delay them. Accelerating is just to move your camera according to your weapon swing in order to make it hit faster. And dragging is just the opposite, to move against your swing direction. So basically the acceleration is just to surprise your opponent and to be faster than his reaction time, or to try to bait out the parry and hit him right after with the drag. One of the early questions is, okay, which one is better, parry or chambering? And if you are able to not panic parry, to read the animations and to really only parry when the damaging attack is about to hit, this is called hard reading. So if you're able to do that, this is the best and most essential skill you can have. Then if you can really hard read your opponent, then you're absolutely golden. Chambering is somewhat of an option to invest your stamina and to counter attacks you can't really read yet. I will go into a bit more detail about that, but yeah, being able to chamber is a very essential skill as well, so at least train it, so if you want to chamber you can do it properly. Alright, let's have a look a bit about the loadouts, more specifically the armor you want to take, and as a reference I just have the stat screen from a player and streamer who is absolutely dominant in Mordhau. So you can, this is an old screen, but it just gives you a good picture. This is one of the most precise and best players I know, so this is a good indicator what top level hit distribution should be looking for, and you can see that the absolute majority is torso hits, and then followed by head and just a small portion of leg hits. So in general you want your torso to have the best armor possible, because most hits will be going to your torso. And then you want to make sure that your head is covered as well. Your head takes the most damage, and there are quite some weapons who can just one-shot you if you're not wearing the proper headgear. Alright, so this is a list that just uses the same color coding as the advanced weapon tab in-game to give a good picture and to help judging which armor slot is best, or which armor level is best for which slot. You will see that there are some kind of breaking points. If I filter for the head, for example, then you will see there is some kind of breaking point. Mostly for going from a level 2 armor to level 3. So basically you have a huge benefit if you really go for a level 3 armor on the head. And you shouldn't have less than armor 2 or armor level 2, because then you can see there are quite some attacks that are able to one-shot you. Let's have a look for the torso slot. And you can see that there's some kind of shift from the low tier weapons to the higher tier weapons. So for the lower tier weapons, level 2 armor is enough to just get the benefit of being a 3-shot kill. And for the higher tier weapons, it is the level 3. In general, especially for frontline, there's so much random damage coming in, and most of them, or most of the damage will hit you on the torso. So basically, if you do not have a very good reason not to, go for a level 3 armor, at least as a beginner. And then let's have a look at the leg armor, or the leg damage distribution. You can see that there's a very dominant breaking point from level 1 to level 2. Previously this breaking point had been, or has been, from level 0 to level 1, but they changed it and shifted it. So basically it is somewhat of enough to have a level 2 armor on the legs, because only few people really aim for the legs. You won't get as much hits on the legs as on the other slots, so armor is not that important. But if you can, you want to take a level 2 armor at least to just switch from a 2-shot kill to a 3-shot kill. Okay, last but not least, a bit more general stuff about the loadouts. You can show the default classes or you can just hide them, and eventually as you progress in the game you will create a lot of loadouts. I'm pretty sure about that. It helps if you have some kind of system, and I like to include the armor distribution. First number is the headgear, the second one is the torso and the leg, and then I personally like to include the equipment I have and the perks to just see what a loadout is about and not try to remember. And yeah, that helps a lot. Also, if you only want to have one look, voice and so on, I suggest to create one basic loadout with your cosmetics, or at least with the looks, how you want to have the voice and the face and so on, and then just copy from that, so you don't have to redo the cosmetics all the time. Then a thing of note, if you're into weapon cosmetics, and you will eventually I guess, whatever you pick on the horde mode in your armory, however you put your skin here in the horde mode or battle royale mode, whenever you try to pick a weapon like that, it will look exactly like you did put it in the horde. For example, let's see for the dagger. I'm just going for the default now, and when I try to get the dagger, it will look like the default. Then I switch it back. In the horde tab, I like it like this, and I like it colored that way. And if you put it now, it will be looking like that by default. So whatever you put on the horde mode on your equipment and cosmetics, it will be the default. It's not for the armor stuff, but for the weapons at least. So yeah, if you like a specific weapon to look the same way all the time, just customize it once in the horde and battle royale tab in the armory. Okay, so as a beginner, you have 3 armor slots that determine how much hits you can take. As a beginner, I would always suggest to go for level 3 armor, and then as well for the chest. And for the legs, level 2 is okay. So go at least or start when you plan your loadout with a 3-3-2. And then for the weapons, I would suggest to pick the longsword, because from the weapon for the damage distribution, it is one of the most versatile weapons. It's pretty much in the middle, as well from release and swing times and wind-up times, and all the other numbers are pretty much in the middle of it. So yeah, it's the most all-round weapon I could think of, and it doesn't favor the strike or the stab. So you don't make a habit to just strike or just stab, because the weapon doesn't favor any of that. So as a beginner, I would highly suggest to pick the longsword. And if you picked up some experience, then you can dabble around in the 5-point weapon region. The billhook is leaned on the longsword stats, but it is longer and favors the stab. The war axe is shorter but favors the strikes, and the messer is somewhat of a long sword with favoring the strikes. But as a beginner loadout, as said, I would suggest the longsword. And then there are the perks. Alright, so Brawler is just increasing the fist damage. This is only to have some fun build, to go a bit boxing, but yeah, not a very serious perk. The Peasant is just to get access to some special weapons, but it limits your amount of armor you can take greatly, so yeah, it's a fun perk as well. Friendly, as a beginner, is extremely handy, because you will hit others because you are not as precise already, and you will get hit because your positioning is not as good. So reducing the damage you do to friendlies and you take from friendlies is, well, I can highly suggest that. Wrecker is, well, to more damage against structures. In the real combat, not as useful. Second Wind, 3 stamina on hit. This is only when you really hit your opponent, not when he parries or such. So it is quite an investment for 2 points. If you have the points, especially for dual builds, then I would take it. Every bit of stamina to not get disarmed can help. But apart from that, in a normal frontline scenario, not as useful. The Flesh Wound, it gives you somewhat 5 more seconds to get the last damaging or last kill hit in. For ranked duels, or to really make sure you get the first kill on the duel, it helps. But yeah, apart from ranked or competitive play, I won't really suggest that. Ranger, well, it's just for range attacks for archers, so you can counter other archers as well, or better. Not as useful for the melee combat, of course. Acrobat is... This one really has some real fight application. So if you like to jump to disguise your animations or to surprise your opponent, if you have the spare 1 point and if you like to jump or use jumping attacks, go for it. I wouldn't really go for the 1 point investment though. Fireproof, on the other hand, at least in frontline or the new mode, how it's called, well, never mind. A lot of people use fire pots, so it is a very viable point. So red, yeah, crouching speed, not that much. Smith, yeah, if you're a builder, maybe, but apart from that, no. Bloodlust, this is a tricky one, because it sounds very good. Get a kill and get full health, but as a beginner you won't get that much kills, so having Bloodlust and 5 points is really an investment. Just don't go for it as a beginner. So Scavenger, it is a fun perk, but well, having a proper loadout you can work well with by yourself is just straight up better, I think, because this is very random. It's fun though, but yeah. Fury, get full stamina on kill. If you really faint a lot and invest a lot of stamina for your kill, it might be helpful, but 2 points, you normally don't have that spare. Huntsman, oh no, I mixed up the Ranger and the Huntsman. Ranger is just to move quicker, of course, silly me, and Huntsman is the counter, the counter perk for other archers. Cat reduces fall damage. Yeah, you don't fall that much in this game, so no, not really useful. Tenacious is more of a convenience perk, especially in frontline, I think. And if you have the time to disengage from a battle long enough to have your passive health regeneration trigger, you are normally safe anyways, so it doesn't help you really to survive. It's more a convenience thing to get into combat faster again. But yeah, at least for frontline, if I have the spare point, I really like to take that. Rush, normally you have some kind of wind up time in your sprint. When you start sprinting right away, you will sprint slower and get faster eventually. With this one, you will be at maximum speed right after a kill. It is very popular together with the Maul, because the Maul can just one-shot every head, or armor level on a head, no matter if it's armor level 3. But apart from that, it's more of a preference perk. And then there's dodge. I personally haven't really tested dodges at all. It is a high point investment, but at least on paper it looks very good, because if you have a good feel for weapon ranges, you can dab in and out of the weapon range of your opponent and abuse that to hit him in his recovery time, because he will miss a swing when you dodged away, and you can start your attack and hit him during his recovery phase. Basically, but I fear if I get used to dodge, I would be hampering myself for any loadout which doesn't have dodge, so I just didn't touch it at all, to be honest. So okay, which ones are the best? For frontline, fireproof, you will encounter a lot of fire pots, so take it into consideration. As a beginner, I highly suggest to take friendly, and yeah, apart from that, tenacious looks good if you have the chance, or well, I prefer to go for a bandage, because this one doesn't take as much time to kick in as tenacious perk, and I would rather invest the 1 point in the bandage than into tenacious, because it is very fast, so you can, even if you can just disengage from combat for a few seconds, you can get a heal off, and it is reliable. And you can restock it at chests on a frontline map. So I would prefer a bandage over tenacious. If you can, why not pick both? Maybe get rid of fireproof if you're not as scared of fire pots or something, and switch in tenacious. So this would be somewhat of my beginner loadout as all-round beginner loadout, to be suited well for almost every scenario. There's one more thing to talk about, and that would be shields. Shields are a very polarizing topic. A lot of players consider them to be a crutch for noob players, though they have the mechanics and their merit. I will just tell you about it, and you can judge for yourself if you want to use it. First, you have to understand there are two different kinds of shields. There are shields which have a block that is held, and then there are some which doesn't. The Targe would be the lower shield with outer held block. The other one would be the Buckler. Initially, the benefit for the no held block shields was that if you run out of stamina and you block with your shield and you get the shield removed or disarmed in a way, then you gained some stamina back. They changed that mechanic, but that was previously the benefit you have from non-held block shield. The benefit you have now is a higher parry drain negation. The Targe have 13 points, and the Buckler is the second no held block shield, has a parry drain negation of 14. When you have a look at the weapons, then 13 points is the highest parry drain negation you can get. There are quite some weapons who have that already, but most of them are two-handed. So, depending on which weapon you want to use, the Targe might not even be an improvement. But, well, at least the Buckler is by 1 point at least. If you use a very low parry drain negation weapon or would like to use it, then a Targe or Buckler can improve your parry drain negation considerably. So it is an option to consider. And then there are shields who have an held block. The most dominant is the heater shield. It is cheap, and you can hold your block, and you will just block the first attack that is coming in, though the parry drain negation is lower. Being able to hold your block is a very powerful tool, so having a lower parry drain negation is a fair mechanic. Even though you might think, hey, I have a shield, why isn't parrying or blocking with that not easier? Because yeah, it is just to counter the very strong option to hold your block. Because being able to hold your block, and if you have good reaction to evade kicks, then you are basically immune to feints or morphs with that. And the slower parry brain negation is somewhat the reason why you would like to avoid to feint too much or morph too much against the shield user if you're not able to land kicks consistently. So you just want to go for the stamina game and disarm your opponent when he is using a shield, because, well, if you're not able to land kicks consistently, then you won't land feints too much because you can just hold his block. Because reading feints and morphs as a beginner is quite difficult, the option to have a shield that allows you to hold your block is very appealing. It also helps you to get into the game and not die as much. In the long run, I would really suggest to not fully rely on shields. Try to get used to just parry on time. Or at least still try to parry in the very last moment possible, so you don't fall into the habit to just hold up your shield whenever you think your opponent will be attacking, and to open up yourself for kicks. With this basic setup, the 332 and the heater shield, you still have 6 points for perks and weapons, so I leave it to your own discretion. I still would suggest friendly and tenacious as beginner perks, or maybe fireproof as well, and then just pick the weapon you would like. Alright, this pretty much sums it up as the beginner steps, what I want to give into the hands of someone who just started Mordhau, and I really hope that this helps you, and well, if it really helped you, I would appreciate a like, and if it didn't help you, then I would appreciate some constructive comment. Thank you for listening, and see you on the battlefield.
All together! Onward to glory!